International Dairy Week presents Around the Barn. Hello, I'm your host, Casey Treloar, and this will be the online space where those in the Australian dairy industry can connect with each other, as well as those right around the world in the lead up to Australia's premier dairy show in January 2022. This will be the one-stop shop where you can catch up with our sponsors, exhibitors and judges to talk all things cows, technology and showing down under.
Well, now we're joined by Roger Turner from Jetstream Genetics. And for those that are familiar with Roger, he makes many a trip down under. Roger, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, well, great, Casey, and certainly great to be here. It's, as we know, we've had to make some changes the last couple of years with all the precautions that are going around in the world. So it's great to even connect virtually here for a little while until we meet in person in January.
Absolutely. Look, Roger, obviously you sadly won't be able to join us for next year with COVID borders and restrictions, but can you take us through why you've spent, I guess, so much time at Dairy Week over the years?
I think there's only one Dairy Week that I've missed out of them all. It started with as a fitter when I was coming down helping some exhibitors when we used to show out underneath the old gum tree. And lots of great stories and events happened in that capacity, and see it evolve through these years. To the event that we have, the capacity, the crowd that has grown, the trade show that's developed. It's just been nonstop. So I mean, for these number of years, it's just been incredible for me to be there from the start and from the infraction of Dairy Week to see the capacity of it today. It's unreal. I've been through so many different segments of it, as an exhibitor and helping some breeders, to judging, to being a commercial exhibitor, to helping breeders and showing cattle. I walked through a lot of the elements, and it's just been great.
And Roger, obviously it's a very, very exciting time in the US. We're in the lead up to World Dairy Expo. Can you just take us through a bit about what the energy is like over there at the moment in the lead up to the biggest show there?
Well, certainly, we are getting ready as next week we walk into World Dairy Expo, and it's in my hometown here, just outside in Madison. And again, we've gone through a lot of similar hurdles that you guys have gone through with the restrictions and the cancellation, and now trying to bring it back this year. The excitement is really high. It just, people want to show cows, I think, more than anything, and I think everybody has just got a lot of energy to bring to Expo next week. The cattle entries are high. The enthusiasm is over the top. And there's been lots of people that have gone, I'll call it the extra mile to get here. COVID testing, flights, moving cattle around, just making communications and coordinations, particularly from the cattle coming from north of the border, and how they're getting them here and the restrictions they've had to go through. It is phenomenal.
Now, Roger, you've been to some of the greatest shows on earth, both obviously in the US and right across Europe as well. How does Australia's biggest cow show compare?
Well, I've always said that Dairy Week has some of the best cows in all of those great shows that, I've been involved with, whether it's at Swiss Expo or here in North America, wherever it is. I always felt it's just been it hasn't got the world exposure in some cases, it's just always been a little bit under the radar, if you would, with some of the hype that some of the other events have gone on to with lights and flash and glimmer and all this kind of stuff. But Dairy Week has just maintained that extreme high level of competition and breeder existence. To me, it's a step above all the other ones in that capacity.
Roger, you mentioned you've been to many a Dairy Week over the years and over its time. Can you take us maybe through some of your greatest memories or greatest moments at the show in Australia?
Well, I don't think I've had any bad memories. Certainly there's some that have left a few scars, if you would, but they've all been great, and we've all been able to sit around and laugh at them many times through the years, but it really was when we were, I call it, showing out underneath the old gum tree, with some of the really exciting years. And at that vision, the founders had all this vision of what Dairy Week was going to look like in 5 years, 10 years, 25 years, and onward. And it was like a little county fair that time. We tied in the sheds and we showed underneath the tree and we walked around the tree and we lined them up and now to see the capacity to a venue that's got air conditioning and stadium seating and all these kind of amenities that I never envisioned was going to happen at that time. It's just been phenomenal. It really has. It's gone on so far, so far.
Of course. And Roger, can you tell us, I guess, in recent years, what your role has been in coming over to Dairy Week each year for?
In recent years, since I've been in with Jetstream Genetics since 2012, since then I've really been I'll call it a commercial exhibitor with International Dairy Week, where I've been with Genetics Australia and been tied in with their capacity and promoting our sire program, meeting with distributors, meeting with resellers, having those connections with the breeders all week long. And as it's been going to Australia for so many years, I have so many great friendships and relationships. We always just catch up at Dairy Week, and it's just so great. So certainly the last few years have been on the commercial exhibitor side, but still the excitement has been there from the cattle show, and I've got to help a lot of exhibitors show a few cows over the past few years as well, and that's been a great for me as well.
Yeah, so on that, I mean, Roger, I guess you've gained a bit of a reputation to finding yourself on the halter of some of the greatest cows that have graced the ring at Dairy Week. Can you take us through some of the more favourite cows, I guess, that you've had the privilege of leading?
Well, I think I've had lots as Casey, I've been really privileged to, as I call it, walk and lead a few of those great cows. I think the one year that it just really stands out with me is the year that Elmar, had such a great showing with Grand and Reserve and honorable mention, and that all in the related family of the Jessicas. That year was a special year for me that'll just, never go away. Not only with the cows that won, the great show that was happening, but when I think back to when I first went to Australia, when I was much younger than I am today, that was a farm that I went to and spent some time with. Steve and I are close in age. They dumped me off at Elmar Holsteins, and I spent a lot of time with Jeff and Rosa and Steve and the family. And then, a number of years later, we've had a great friendship. We always meet up, and now social media. We talk through the year. And then that was a really special moment for me to be involved with the family after such a great relationship for all these years. That was really, really special.
And the cow you led that year garnered a bit of a special nickname, the Big Black Bus, I believe it was.
Yeah, it was. Yes, she might have been the underdog that day, but it really suited the judge of that day. From the UK, and that was his kind of cow, and really with the strength that she's had, and she's gone on and come back and done some other marvelous things as well in the show ring. So that Jessica family's been tremendous, but that cow has also been just a phenomenal cow as well. And that was just a great year. It just really was.
Obviously, we've referred to the Jessica family. What are some of the other big name cows that you've really enjoyed seeing succeed at Dairy Week?
Well, there's been a number of great cows. Morty Lady was a cow I think that Brian Leslie made champion. That was always a cow that really, stood out for me. She was such a modern day cow that fitted the capacity and the dairy strength. I thought that's a cow that's been engraved in my mind as well. Shottle Nomi was another great cow. I got to see that cow for a number of years. But then when I judged the Holstein show, she was my champion. So I really felt that was another great cow that really has made a great impact and really a great name for not only the Australian dairy industry and the Holstein breed, but for International Dairy Week.
Yeah, so Roger, you have had a few opportunities, I guess, to judge here. Can you take us through some of the highlights of that over the years?
There's just been all of them. I think I've judged all the breeds except for the jerseys at this time, and they've all just had special moments. There's always been some outstanding cows. The Illawarras have been great. The Guernsey breed has always been just phenomenal how it's progressed each and every year. The Brown Swiss always have 3 or 4 outstanding cows that really just are just above and beyond. And every time it just never quits. The quality, the extension of the cattle. Sometimes we've had those numbers up and down in size of those shows vary a little bit, but the quality's never backed up.
Now, Roger, coming up in this podcast, we will be finally announcing the judge for the Holstein show. But part of this too is that we're very excited to be able to have associate judges for the first time at Dairy Week, and that'll be in the Holstein and the Jersey breeds. And we are quite excited to announce that young Cameron Yarnold from New South Wales will be the associate judge alongside our Holstein judge for Dairy Week coming up in January. Roger, how exciting is that for that kind of concept to come about at Dairy Week?
I'm a big supporter of the associate judge concept. I think it really brings another elevation to the show. I think it shows the show, the high quality of the cattle that need to be evaluated in such a short period of time. I think it also gives the exhibitors everybody gets a fair look, even when you get really large classes. And certainly the weather can be, a little challenging sometimes at Dairy Week. Those cows are under a lot of stress. I think that it speeds up the show and gives everybody a real fair and quality look. But I also think that it also helps the judge of the day. But I also think it helps develop what we feel are going to be our next level of judges, to give that associate judge that position, to be in the middle of the ring, evaluate those cattle, talk with the lead, judge and assess the day. I really think that is a hands-on education. I think we can go to judging schools and we can talk on the outside of the rail, and this is what I would have done if I was there, and all that kind of stuff. But I think it really puts that young person in that position to say, hey, this is a different look, and that this is my chance to make that great development. And it really is a beautiful educational experience. I think it's a great opportunity. Wonderful choice. You guys are doing that.
Absolutely. And look, Cam Yarnold himself is only in his 20s. How big an opportunity is that going to be for him?
I think he's going to be thrilled, over the moon. I'm sure he's tickled pink. And I think that is great. I think, age is one thing, and everybody's got that maturity level, which he does. And I think that's really, really a great fit, to make it to this. And the education and the experiences he's going to have with that is really going to help him in his judging career, without a doubt, in my mind.
Absolutely. Well, Roger Turner from the US, thank you so much for joining us for this podcast. It's been an absolute pleasure to catch up, albeit virtually, and we'll be sorry to not be able to catch up with you in person at Dairy Week, but hopefully it won't be too far down the track that you can come back to Australia again. Roger, thanks again, and all the best at World Dairy Expo next week. It sounds like it'll be a really great time for breeders to come together again.
It's great. It's a pleasure to be here. Certainly wishing everybody a great International Dairy Week, and cheers from World Dairy Expo, because there's been lots of communications with some of the connections at International Dairy Week. I've spent some time here to develop the best protocols and the best things to bring back to International Dairy Week through the years. I know Robin spent a number of days with me here a few years ago. So great connection, great communication, and we're sending the best wishes that way, as you guys are. So thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Roger.
All right, Casey. Cheers.
Well, now we're joined by Gino Positi from Holstein Australia. Gino, welcome to this episode of Around the Barn. Gino, can you first of all take us through what International Dairy Week means to Holstein Australia?
Thank you, Casey. International Dairy Week, it's such a big event in the Australian dairy calendar. It has multiple benefits for not just Holstein Australia, but the dairy industry in general. So obviously, breeders use it to showcase their animals, showcase their breeding, showcase their lifelong work that they've put towards breeding of their animals, whether they be Holsteins or any of the other breeds that show at Dairy Week. As we know, it's a multi-breed show. But apart from showcasing their animals, it's a community event. It's an event whereby the farming community get to meet, get to spend some time together, they network. It's a break away from the daily humdrum of farm life, business life, etc. It's hard work being at Dairy Week. Don't get me wrong, it's not an easy exercise to go through. However, a lot of exhibitors treat it as their annual holiday, and it's a chance to catch up with fellow breeders, acquaintances, service providers, all industry matters. So it's a community event.
Look, in terms of COVID, how, from Holstein Australia's perspective, how have you seen the industry adapt, say, over the last 18 months?
Look, it's been variable. At a farm level, most farmers really haven't been impacted greatly. Having said that, of recent times, unfortunately, farmers in Victoria and especially in New South Wales have copped the brunt of severe lockdowns, etc., which would have impacted on their farm businesses. But more importantly, it's impacted on their social networking and their mental health and their mental well-being. So not being able to do the things that they would normally associate, simple things like just going into the township for their daily supplies, whether they be rural supplies or even their home domestic supplies. It's impacted on them greatly. I think the impact has been more in terms of the mental well-being of some of the farming community. At a business level, most farmers have been able to ride through the COVID restrictions without a lot of impediment. So it's been a bittersweet sort of thing. Yes, we've been fortunate that as a farming community, and not just the dairy farming community, it'll be all agricultural communities. We've had some restrictions, but compared to people living in suburban areas or built-up areas, it's impacted us far less than what it would have had in some of those major towns and major cities.
We certainly hope so, that's for sure. Look, Gino, you touched on it a little bit earlier on in the interview, but you mentioned that, I mean, obviously Holstein Australia has a massive place in International Dairy Week, certainly with its stall on ringside as well. But you touched on the fact that Dairy Week's not just an event for individual breeds, but rather a real community event.
Yeah, absolutely. As you mentioned, Casey, we as in Holstein Australia do have a stand at International Dairy Week, and along with some of the other breeds, they also promote their breed. But we encourage all farming population to mix and match and socialise, network, provide camaraderie for each other. As an industry, we're becoming less in numbers, and we need to unite as an industry. And obviously, if we can have a united front and towards the general public and towards government, it all should hold us in good stead moving into the future.
Of course. Now, speaking of camaraderie and breeds sort of working together or maybe competing against each other, obviously you're wearing a Holstein Youth shirt tonight. Gino, take us through the importance of the youth show at Dairy Week every year.
As you know, the International Youth Challenge is one of the first items on the program at International Dairy Week, and it is absolutely extremely well represented at state levels, interstate levels. We've even had teams from New Zealand compete, and I think they placed well a couple of 3 years ago. It gives the youth the ability to improve their skills, improve their leadership aspirations. It gives them networking abilities whereby they meet so many different people within the dairy industry. It opens up lifelong friendships within the dairy industry. So obviously with international visitors coming to International Dairy Week, it opens the opportunity for enthusiastic youth members if they wish to travel overseas, and it just gives them an opening and a contact point for them to further develop their aspirations within the dairy industry.
Absolutely, and certainly a lot of us have been able to, from these sorts of shows at International Dairy Week, we have been able to make those international connections. Obviously, I mean, Australia is involved in some exchange programs. Obviously, they're on hold at the moment with COVID, but Holstein Australia, we understand, has set up a new action committee based on youth. Tell us about that.
Before I touch on that, the exchange programs that Holstein Australia has developed over a period of time, unfortunately, currently are in relapse or on hold. We've seen participants go to the United Kingdom, and we've seen host United Kingdom youth people come to Australia and been hosted throughout Australia. We've had a team attend the European Breeders' School with great success, and that's still on the cards. We're looking at reinvigorating the exchange program with New Zealand as well. So there's exchange programs that are holding well into the future. Yes, you touched on a youth development program. One of my fellow directors, Jackie Suarez, is responsible for coordinating that. Pardon me, they've had a few meetings and targeting various age groups within Holstein and other breeds. So it's important that we get the other breeds on song and involved so that they can participate as well. So it won't be just Holstein Australia. We're looking to incorporate other breeds. So we look forward to the interaction with the other breeds on the youth front. As you know, they're our future leaders, our future ambassadors of the industry. So we aim to encourage as many youth activities as possible, ranging from grassroots levels right through to the more mature leadership type programs that can become available.
Absolutely. That certainly sounds incredibly exciting, especially for the new group of youth coming through. Gino, as we touched on a bit before, for both of us being South Australians, our major show has been cancelled, but how excited are you to be able to attend, all going well, International Dairy Week in 2022?
Oh, look, it's been 2 years since any of us have been able to attend International Dairy Week, so there'll be a lot of people there that will be very keen to attend. Their enthusiasm for the dairy industry has been unabated, even though we're going our COVID restrictions. The enthusiasm within the dairy industry has still maintained quite strongly, and with the way the industry is tracking at the moment, there's renewed enthusiasm and optimism. So I would think that there would be quite a jovial mood at International Dairy Week, providing we can all attend unrestricted.
Absolutely. Well, Gino, thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of Around the Barn. It's been a pleasure to speak to you, all things talking Holstein Australia, and obviously they have a massive involvement at International Dairy Week each year. We look forward to seeing you there next year.
Thank you, Casey. Thank you very much, and I look forward to seeing other exhibitors, friends, acquaintances, etc. at International Dairy Week in January of 2022, if possible. Look forward. Bye.
Thanks for your time, Gino. So today we're joined by Warren Ferguson from New Zealand. Warren, thank you for joining us on Around the Barn. Now, Warren, you have been announced as our Holstein judge for International Dairy Week. How excited were you to get the call?
Oh, pretty excited. It's quite an honour to be asked to judge at Dairy Week again. Yes, yeah, very excited.
Look, Warren, you obviously are based in New Zealand. Can you take us through a bit of your operation and the cows that you're breeding over there?
Well, it's a family farm. It's fed on genetics. The genetics, Dad originally started with Jerseys, and we've got Holsteins and Ayrshires as well, but it's predominantly a Jersey herd. It's been going for over 70 years now, and some of those families from the original families Dad had are still here. Michelle and I have run the farm. There's 90-odd hectares for the last 3 years by ourselves. We're lucky our son Corey's keen on the cows too, so he's come home this season. Like I said, it's a family operation. It always has been. Michelle and I have got 2 other sons, Josh and Ashley, 5, nearly 6 grandchildren in another week or 2. And when we show, everyone is involved. The other boys help too. It's always been a family thing at the shows. In years gone by, we've showed big teams of up to 30 cows and milk and that. Not so much nowadays. We do Waikato show and the dairy event over here, which we've been very successful with the dairy event. In 10 years, we've the only breeders who have won the Supreme more than once, and we've won it 4 times. So that's pretty prestigious. And we enjoy, as I say, a good cow's a good cow, whatever the breed she is. And I think that's how I've come about being asked to judge the Holsteins as well. Yeah. And I've judged most shows in New Zealand, the CMEX on farm, the Jersey on farm. And I said Dairy Week, the Jerseys was probably the biggest highlight I've had at IDW doing the Jerseys in 2012, in which my Supreme champion went on and got Supreme of the show. She was the first Jersey to do that. So that's, well, yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit about, I guess, your judging history? You said you've judged at Dairy Week before.
Well, I've done the Jerseys and the Ayrshires. So to get another turn back at doing the Holsteins is, pretty quite honoured, yeah.
And can you take us through, I guess, the prestige of being able to judge at Australia's biggest cow show?
I mean, it is quite prestigious. And as I said, it's an honour to be asked by your peers to judge again and to do another breed is a real honour, yeah.
You touched on it a bit there, some of the success that you have shared in the show ring over in New Zealand. Can you take us through maybe some of your more predominant cows from over the time?
Well, in the last 10 years, Camerica Viola's been, unfortunately, we lost her last year, but at our dairy event in New Zealand, sort of the equivalent of Dairy Week in Australia, as I said, she was junior champion, intermediate twice, Supreme champion Jersey 5 times, and Supreme All Breeds 3 times. So she's probably been the highlight the last few years. And then the last dairy event we went to, we got Supreme with another cow called Blackstone Rose. And also, as I spoke before about cow families, one year at the dairy event in New Zealand, we had an animal in every class from the junior heifer to the senior cow was from the Viola family. And 3 or 4 of them won their classes. The others were only second and third. So that's how predominant the family is. And we've been Supreme exhibitor every year we've been down there. Yeah.
Incredible. Warren, can you take us through, I guess, your passion? Obviously, you guys are predominantly dairy farmers, but the passion for showing cows?
Well, the passion, I suppose it's in your blood. You've been born and bred into it. This year at Waikato, it'll be my 56th show that I've been to, exhibiting cattle at Waikato. Did 70 odd shows before we lost them, but so I'm the only one who can surpass that, I suppose. But it's always been a passion. Predominantly, it's to show what you're breeding. I mean, you obviously go to win. That's human nature. If there's something better beats you, well, so be it. We predominantly try and show something in every age to show what we're breeding. As I said, winning the champion's the pinnacle, but winning the premier exhibitor and breeder is sort of what we're after as well. Yeah, just carrying on. I say Corey's come home, so hopefully we've got a grandson who helps us at the show too. So, we just hope it carries on.
Sure. And look, relationships and certainly family involvement is a big part of the shows. How does Dairy Week maybe compare to some of the bigger shows over there in New Zealand?
Well, it is bigger than our shows, the population of cattle. And I mean, I love going to Australia, especially at the Dairy Week and that, because there's a lot of people doing the same thing you are. They've got a passion for the cow and breeding and everything. So it's a lot of people on the same page. It's a great show to go. I'd been to the dairy event before I got asked to judge, so it's quite, as I said, the first time was a real buzz to get asked, and to get asked back the third time is pretty exciting, yeah.
Of course. Well, Warren, thank you so much for joining us for today's episode of Around the Barn. We very much look forward to having you in the ring at Dairy Week in January to judge the Holsteins, and we look forward to seeing you there.
I hope I get there, yeah. All going to plan.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us for today's episode of Around the Barn. We hope you enjoyed hearing from each of our guests. If you like what we're talking about, make sure you hit the share button. That's all we've got time for. We'll see you next time. Bye for now.